A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
My Weird Prompts is a community-driven initiative exploring how AI can fuel curiosity and uncover the fascinating ways our world works. GPU compute for this podcast is generously provided by Modal. Learn more at modal.com.
You ever find yourself standing in front of the pantry at 10 o'clock at night, just staring into the abyss, hoping a low-fat snack that actually tastes good will magically materialize? It is that specific moment of desperation where most diets go to die. We have all been there, Herman. It is dark. The house is quiet, and suddenly that bag of high-fat potato chips in the back of the cupboard starts calling your name like a siren song. Today's prompt from Daniel is about that exact struggle, focusing on technical strategies for low-fat snacking, satiety engineering, and how to survive a cheat night without a gallbladder-induced disaster. We are going deep into the architecture of the kitchen and the biology of the brain to figure out why we crave what we crave and how to hack the system.
It is the ultimate test of the system, corn. I am Herman Poppleberry, and I have been looking forward to this because the snacking landscape in 26 is honestly fascinating. We are currently sitting in a period of massive transition. We have seen an 18.4% year-over-year growth in the better-for-you snack market, and it is not just marketing fluff anymore. We are seeing real innovation in food science that allows us to hack the brain's reward system without the lipid-heavy payload that usually comes with comfort food. The 26 dietary guidelines have officially shifted to prioritize nutrient density over simple caloric restriction, and snacking is the front line of that battle.
It feels like the stakes are higher now, especially for people following the protocols we have discussed in the past, like back in episode 761, where we broke down the basics of post-gallbladder nutrition. If you are managing bioreflux or you are on a GLP-1 medication, a high-fat slip-up at 10 p.m. is not just a caloric mistake, it is a physical catastrophe. You are looking at hours of bloating, nausea, or worse. So, Herman, when we talk about low-fat snacking in 26, are we still stuck with those cardboard rice cakes from the 90s, or has the science actually moved the needle? Because I remember those rice cakes, and they tasted like disappointment and air.
The cardboard era is over, thankfully. The shift we are seeing this year is toward what dietitians are calling fiber maxing. The 26 dietary guidelines have moved away from ultra-processed fat-free traps, which were basically just delivery systems for high-fructose corn syrup and maltodextrin, and toward whole food density. The core framework I want to establish today for Daniel and the rest of our listeners is what I call the P plus P rule, that is, protein plus produce. If you are eating a snack that does not have both a protein source and a fiber source, you are essentially just borrowing energy from your future self. You will be hungry again in 20 minutes because you have not addressed the hormonal signaling of hunger.
Protein plus produce. I like the acronym. It is easy to remember even when you are half asleep staring at the fridge. But let's be real, Herman. When I want a bag of salty, crunchy potato chips, a stick of celery and a piece of turkey breast does not hit the same way. There is a texture gap there. There is a psychological gap. How do we bridge the gap between the biological need for satiety and the psychological craving for that specific crunch or that fatty mouthfeel?
That is where satiety engineering comes in. We have to look at the hormone ghrelin. When your stomach is empty, it secretes ghrelin to tell your brain to eat. High-fat snacks like chips or nuts are incredibly energy-dense but very low in volume, so they do not stretch the stomach lining enough to signal a stop to that ghrelin production. You can eat 500 calories of potato chips and your brain still thinks you are starving because the volume is so low. If you switch to something like air pop popcorn, you are getting massive volume for a fraction of the fat. You can have 3 cups of popcorn for about 90 calories and almost 0 fat. The physical stretch of that popcorn in your stomach sends a mechanical signal to the brain saying, "Hey, we are full, stop the ghrelin." But we can take it further with texture mimicry.
But popcorn can be a trap too, right? Because the second you add butter, or even some of those theater-style seasonings that are loaded with palm oil, you are right back into high-fat territory. I have noticed a lot of people try to do the low-fat thing, but then they use oil in the popper, or they drench it in a topping that negates the whole point. How do we get that flavor without the gallbladder-destroying fat content?
You have to optimize the delivery. This is where the air fryer has become the MVP of the 26 kitchen. It is the primary tool for texture mimicry. You can take something like canned chickpeas, which are naturally low fat and high protein, pat them dry, and here is the secret. Spray them with a tiny bit of aquafaba, which is the liquid from the chickpea can, instead of oil. Then season them with smoked paprika, nutritional yeast for a cheesy flavor, and garlic powder. Air fry them at 400 degrees for 15 minutes. They become literally as crunchy as a corn chip. You are getting that mechanical crunch, you are getting the protein, and you are getting the fiber, all without the inflammatory seed oils. It is about mimicking the experience while changing the biological payload.
I have tried those air-fried chickpeas, and they are surprisingly good, but there is a psychological element to the pantry itself that we need to address. I think about the architecture of the kitchen. If I have to cook something for 15 minutes in the air fryer, and there is a bag of cookies sitting right next to it at eye level, my willpower is going to fail 80% of the time. We are human. We take the path of least resistance. How do we engineer the pantry so that the low-fat choice is the easiest choice?
You have to treat your pantry like a user interface. If the high-fat triggers are at eye level, you have already lost the battle before it starts. The first step of a pantry audit is the repositioning phase. Anything that is a high-fat trigger needs to be in an opaque container on a high shelf or in a different room entirely. If you have to get a step stool to reach the cookies, you are adding a friction point that gives your prefrontal cortex time to kick in. Then you populate the eye-level space with what I call the standby staples. We are talking about things like roasted edamame, chickpea puffs, and non-fat Greek yogurt.
Let's talk about that Greek yogurt for a second, because that feels like a foundational tool for anyone doing low-fat living. I know you use it for everything from dips to desserts. If someone is used to full-fat sour cream or heavy ranch dressing, non-fat Greek yogurt can taste a bit sharp, or even chalky to some people. Is there a way to make that transition less jarring for the palate?
The sharpness is actually an advantage if you know how to balance it chemically. If you are making a savory dip, you mix that non-fat yogurt with a bit of lemon juice, fresh dill, and a salt-free seasoning blend. The acidity of the lemon mimics the tang of sour cream, but you are getting 18 grams of protein per serving with 0 grams of fat. If you want something sweet, you can turn that yogurt into what people are calling yogurt bark. You spread it thin on a baking sheet, mix in a little bit of stevia or monk fruit, top it with a few berries and a drizzle of honey, and freeze it. When you break it into shards, it has the mouthfeel of white chocolate or ice cream because of the frozen protein structure, but it is pure protein. It is about playing with temperature and texture to distract the tongue from the lack of lipids.
I want to push back on the fat-free thing for a minute, Herman. We have seen this cycle before, specifically in the late 80s and early 90s, where everyone went fat-free. But then the food companies just pumped the products full of sugar and corn syrup to make up for the lost flavor. Is that still a risk in 26? Or have we gotten smarter about the labels? I worry that people will hear low fat and just go buy a box of fat-free Snackwells.
It is a massive risk, and I am glad you brought that up. This is a point where listeners need to be hyper-vigilant. When you see a label that says fat-free cookies or fat-free snack cakes, your internal alarm should be going off. Usually, they have swapped the fat for maltodextrin or high amounts of cane sugar to maintain the structure and taste. This spikes your insulin, which leads to a massive blood sugar crash and an even bigger craving 2 hours later. The goal is not to find processed fat-free versions of junk food. The goal is to find foods that are naturally low in fat, things like shrimp, tuna, egg whites, and legumes. When you stay close to the whole food source, you do not have to worry about the sugar compensation trap. We are looking for nutrient density, not just chemical subtraction.
That makes sense. It is the difference between an engineered chemical snack and a biologically appropriate food. But let's get into the hard stuff, the cheat night. Everyone has that one night a week where they just want a burger or a pizza. If you've had your gallbladder removed, or if you're just trying to stay lean and avoid the GLP-1 nausea, a standard pepperoni pizza is like a hand grenade for your digestive system. It is 40 grams of fat in 2 slices. How do we reconstruct a cheat night so it feels indulgent but stays under that 10-gram of fat threshold?
Cheat night engineering is my favorite topic because it proves that restriction does not have to be boring. Let's take the pizza example. The primary fat drivers are the crust and the cheese. If you swap a traditional dough for a cauliflower crust or even a large portobello mushroom cap, you have already eliminated the heavy carbohydrates and some of the hidden oils. Then, you use a low-fat or fat-free mozzarella. In the past, fat-free cheese was like melting plastic, but the new formulations we are seeing in 26 use potato starch and plant-based proteins to get a much better pull and melt. You load it with vegetables, use a lean protein like shredded chicken breast or even 95% lean ground turkey, and you could have a whole pizza for less than 12 grams of fat. It is about the assembly, not the deprivation.
What about the burger? That is the quintessential American comfort food. If you go to a fast food joint, even a basic cheeseburger is pushing 30 grams of fat. If you are doing a home version, are you just stuck with a dry turkey patty that tastes like a hockey puck? Because that is the common complaint with ultra-lean meats.
Not if you use moisture locking techniques. The reason 95% lean beef or turkey tastes dry is the lack of fat to lubricate the protein fibers during the cooking process. You can fix this by grating half an onion and some mushrooms into the meat before you form the patties. The onion juice provides the moisture, and the fiber in the onion helps hold the structure. You can also add a tablespoon of non-fat Greek yogurt into the mix. It sounds weird, but it acts as a binder and keeps the meat tender. When you sear it in a non-stick pan or the air fryer, the moisture stays locked in. Serve it in a lettuce wrap or on a toasted whole grain thin bun with some fat-free honey mustard, and you are looking at a high-protein, low-fat meal that actually feels like a burger.
I noticed you mentioned 95% lean beef. I think some people hear low fat and they think they have to go full vegan or only eat chicken breast until they turn into one. But 95% lean ground beef is actually a powerhouse for zinc and B12, which are things people often lack when they cut out fats. It is about the ratio, not the total elimination.
The ratio is everything, especially for the GLP-1 community. We are seeing millions of people on these medications now, and one of the side effects is a complete aversion to greasy foods. If you are on a GLP-1 and you eat a high-fat burger, you're going to be miserable for 24 hours because your gastric emptying is already slowed down. The fat just sits there in your stomach, fermenting and causing those terrible sulfur burps. So, these low-fat reconstructions are not just for weight loss anymore, they are for basic comfort and survival for a huge portion of the population. We are seeing a convergence of medical necessity and culinary innovation.
It is interesting how the medical side is catching up with the culinary side. You mentioned the psychology of adherence earlier. I have always felt that cold turkey restriction is a recipe for a massive binge later. If I tell myself I can never have a chip again, I am eventually going to eat the whole bag in a moment of weakness. How does planned snacking fit into a long-term strategy for someone who wants to stay consistent?
It is the difference between a pressure cooker and a safety valve. If you have a planned, low-fat snack every night at 8 p.m., you are satisfying that psychological need for a reward without blowing your metabolic progress. It prevents the all-or-nothing mentality. If you know you have a bowl of frozen mango chunks or a serving of air pop popcorn waiting for you, you are much less likely to graze on random high-fat items throughout the day. You are essentially training your brain to expect a specific, controlled reward. This is what we call the safety valve effect. It releases the pressure of the diet so you don't explode on the weekend.
Let's talk about the produce side of the P+P rule. We have talked a lot about protein, but the fiber part is where a lot of people struggle. If I am sitting down to watch a movie, a bowl of steamed broccoli is not exactly what I am reaching for, no matter how much I want to be healthy. What are some produce-based snacks that actually feel like snacks and provide that sensory satisfaction?
Frozen fruit is the secret weapon here. Frozen grapes, specifically. When they are frozen, the sugar crystallizes in a way that gives them the texture of a mini sorbet. They take longer to eat because they are cold, which gives your brain time to register the sugar, and they are packed with polyphenols. Another one is jicama. If you slice jicama into sticks and hit it with some lime juice and Tajin seasoning, it has a crunch that rivals any potato chip, but it is almost entirely water and prebiotic fiber. It is incredibly refreshing and very low in calories. It hits that salty, sour, crunchy profile perfectly.
I am a big fan of the frozen banana and ice cream too. You take a couple of overripe bananas, freeze them in chunks, and then blitz them in a high-powered blender. It turns into the exact consistency of soft-serve ice cream. If you add a teaspoon of unsweetened cocoa powder, you have a chocolate dessert that is basically fat-free. It is a game-changer for late-night sweet cravings.
And you can even add a scoop of chocolate protein powder to that to hit your P+P requirement. That is a perfect example of satiety engineering. You are getting the potassium and fiber from the banana, the protein from the powder, and the cold temperature slows down your eating speed. It is a win on every level. The cold temperature actually triggers certain thermoreceptors in the mouth that have been shown to increase the feeling of fullness.
We have talked a lot about the what and the why, but I want to get into the how-to for someone who is listening and wants to start this tomorrow. If they are looking at their kitchen right now and it is full of the old high-fat triggers, what is the 3-step process to get on track?
Step 1 is the identification phase. You have to be ruthless. Look at the back of every package in your pantry. If the serving has more than 5 to 7 grams of fat, and you know you cannot stop at one serving, it has to go. Step 2 is the replacement phase. Go to the store with a specific list based on what we talked about today. Get the air popcorn, the 95% lean proteins, the non-fat Greek yogurt, and the frozen fruits. Do not just buy what looks healthy, buy the building blocks for these snacks. Step 3 is the repositioning phase we mentioned earlier. Design your environment so that the healthy choice is the path of least resistance. Put the jicama and the yogurt at eye level in the fridge.
I would add a step 4, which is the tool audit. If you do not have an air fryer in 26, you are making this 10 times harder than it needs to be. It is the single best investment for a low-fat lifestyle because it gives you that Maillard reaction, that browning and crispiness, without the oil bath. It turns vegetables into snacks and lean meats into delicacies.
The air fryer is the bridge between misery and sustainability. I also think we should mention hidden fats in seasonings. A lot of people do not realize that pre-mixed taco seasonings or ranch packets often have palm oil or anti-caking agents that can add up if you are using them every day. Switching to pure spices like cumin, smoked paprika, garlic powder, and onion powder allows you to control the flavor without the hidden lipid load. You want to be the chemist of your own kitchen.
It is funny, we started this talking about the 10 p.m. fridge stare, and as we are talking, I am realizing that most of that hunger is probably just boredom or a need for a sensory shift. If you have a high-protein snack that requires some chewing, like those roasted edamame beans, you're engaging your senses in a way that a liquid protein shake just doesn't do.
There is actually research on that, the mastication effect. The physical act of chewing sends signals to the hypothalamus that you are eating. If you drink your calories, your brain does not register them the same way, which is why people can drink 1,000-calorie soda and still feel hungry. That is why I always advocate for whole food snacks over protein shakes whenever possible. You want to force your body to work for it a little bit. It increases the thermic effect of food and keeps you satisfied longer.
We should probably touch on the gallbladder aspect specifically for a moment. For listeners who are in that first month post-surgery, like we discussed in episode 596, the tolerance for fat is almost zero. In that phase, even a healthy fat like avocado can cause a massive bile dump and cramping. Does this snacking strategy change for them, or is it just more of the same?
It becomes even more critical to stick to the absolute lowest fat options. In that acute recovery phase, you want to keep your fat intake per meal under 3 to 5 grams. That means no egg yolks, no avocado, and definitely no oils. You are looking at egg whites, non-fat yogurt, and lots of steamed or raw produce. The goal there is to prevent the bile from backing up into the stomach, which causes that terrible burning sensation. Once you are past that initial phase, you can start to experiment with slightly higher fat thresholds, but the P+P rule remains the gold standard for long-term health. Certain fibers, like the pectin in apples or the beta-glucan in oats, can actually act as natural bile acid sequestrants, helping to manage that post-surgical discomfort.
It is about building a sustainable system. We are not talking about a 2-week crash diet where you eat nothing but cabbage soup. We are talking about how you live your life in a world that is designed to make you overconsume fat and sugar. If you can master the low-fat snack, you have mastered 80% of the struggle.
And the future is looking even better. We are seeing personalized nutrition apps now that can look at your blood glucose response in real time via continuous glucose monitors. For people who want to go really deep, you can see how a specific low-fat snack affects your levels. But for most people, just following these basic principles of volume, protein, and fiber will get them where they need to be. The 2026 U.S. dietary guidelines are finally reflecting this, moving away from the old food pyramid and toward this idea of metabolic flexibility.
I think the biggest takeaway for me today is that the pantry is a tool, not a temptation. If you treat it like a well-oiled machine, it will work for you. If you leave it to chance, it will work against you. It is about taking control of the environment so you don't have to rely on willpower, because willpower is a finite resource that runs out by 10 p.m.
Your environment dictates your behavior. If you want to change your body, change your kitchen first. It sounds simple, but it is the most profound shift you can make. When you walk into a kitchen that is set up for success, you don't have to think. You just execute.
Well, I think we have given people plenty to chew on, literally. If you are struggling with that late-night craving tonight, try the air-fried chickpeas or the frozen grapes before you reach for the chips. Your gallbladder and your waistline will thank you. And remember, it is about progress, not perfection. If you have a high-fat slip-up, don't throw the whole plan away. Just get back to the P+P rule at your next snack.
Consistency over perfection. Every single time you choose a low-fat, high-fiber option, you are reinforcing a better habit and telling your brain that you are in charge, not the ghrelin.
We should wrap it up there. This has been a deep dive into the technical side of snacking, and I think it is a great addition to our ongoing series on low-fat living. If you missed the earlier episodes on meal planning or shopping lists, definitely go back and check the archives at myweirdprompts.com. We have a whole library of resources for post-gallbladder health and metabolic optimization.
It is all about building that knowledge base. The more you understand the biology, the easier the choices become.
Big thanks to our producer, Hilbert Flumingtop, for keeping us on track and making sure we don't wander too far into the weeds. And a huge thank you to Model for providing the GPU credits that power this show. We literally could not do this without their support for our AI pipeline.
If you found this helpful, a quick review on your podcast app really helps us reach more people who might be struggling with these same dietary challenges. We read every single one of them and it helps us shape future episodes.
We are on Telegram too. Just search for My Weird Prompts to get notified when new episodes drop and to join the conversation with other listeners. This has been My Weird Prompts. We will talk to you next time.
Stay curious and stay healthy. Goodbye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, My Weird Prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the close from sloth, from man, from long-eared host. My weird prompts, until next time, stay curious, keep weirding.